Hey, where's Byron Buxton going? We got to do this for Derek, right?
Yeah, for Derek. I know you're listening out there, Derek. So if you're interested in Byron Buxton, his ADP in the last couple of weeks is 85.2. So, yeah, more of a best ball guy. Derek and I were actually talking about that in the live stream. Interested in best ball in the RotoWire, ADP of 85.2. All right, hour 2 of the show is next. We're going to analyze an NFBC best ball cutline draft that went on tonight, interview some of the participants, find out how they drafted with a $75,000 grand prize on the line. That's coming up next, hour 2 of the High Stakes Fantasy Advantage, right here on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio.
XM app is free for most subscribers and easy to use. Listen to Fantasy Sports Radio when you get out of the car. Download today and take us with you wherever you go.
1-0 from Gonsolin with Rivas at second. Pitch to Tatis, shit in the air to deep left field. Forget it. This one is way out of here. Wow. On the roof of the left field pavilion and out of Dodger Stadium completely. His 7th home run in this building this year, and by far the longest, his 42nd home run of the season.
Welcome back to the show. Tom and Greg here with you for one more hour tonight. The Best Ball Cut Line Contest is one of the most unique contests in the fantasy baseball industry. You got 10 teams. You got a best ball format with 2 fab periods, a survivor-type format if you qualify for the playoffs after the All-Star break, and best of all, a $75,000 grand prize. And tonight, we're going to highlight one of those drafts that went on tonight in the NFBC. Going to interview some of the participants, find out how their drafts went. Before we do that, though, Greg, let's find out, how did round 1 of this draft look with 10 teams?
Yeah, like you said, that's 10-team leagues here. So Trey Turner goes first overall, Aaron Judge second, Shohei Ohtani goes third, Jose Ramirez 4, Freddie Freeman 5, Ronald Acuna 6, Yordan Alvarez 7, Julio Rodriguez 8, Manny Machado 9, and Vladimir Guerrero 10.
All right, I should also mention it is a points scoring format, so not rotisserie scoring, so a little bit different for that as well. All right, so let's start talking to some of the people who were drafting tonight. Let's start with Team 6, where Scott Slezak was drafting. Scott, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Thanks for joining us. Okay, so you start off with your 6th pick was Ronald Acuna Jr., and then you came back with Fernando Tatis Jr., so obviously Acuna falling to 6 here in this draft, but I do want to ask you about Tatis Jr., who, of course, is going to be one of the most interesting players to draft in fantasy this year. Due to the suspension, going to have to wait a little bit on Tatis. Any concerns at all with Tatis and having to wait on him until late April, maybe early May at all?
Yeah, certainly there's concerns with, coming back from a lost year, basically, and missing, the first 20 games of the season. But I still feel the talent is there. And, especially in this format where we're doing a best ball, I knew that I could take him early and then, try to back him up somewhere later in the draft with a little more depth at shortstop, which is what I did.
Yeah, in a best ball format, I have no problem at all. He should be back around April 20th or so, so I like that. So you were heavy on hitters. Your first 7 picks were hitters. You started out
yes.
Acuna, Tatis, Goldschmidt, 2 catchers even, Salvador Perez and Wilson Contreras, Corey Seager, and George Springer. Talk about that strategy of, again, this is a math points contest, right? You need the most points, doesn't matter where it comes from.
Yeah, well, actually, this was the very first time I've drafted in this format before. So you're just looking at the scoring system for it. After drafting a lot of traditional roto leagues, I felt that I had to be heavy on hitters. I had to be heavy on power hitters. And I wanted to, fill, some of the harder to fill positions earlier in the drafts, which is why I had the 2 catchers early and the 2 shortstops early. The biggest fear is just with the 2 small, bad periods getting depleted out of position. So that's why I went with those 2, solid, steady catchers early in the draft.
Now, in this format, a lot of people don't put a lot of value on saves. It's not a high priority scoring position, and so that's why closers will fall. So Clase falls to the 8th round. That's where you got him. So kind of walk us through your thought process on taking him there. Some people won't even bother with saves in this contest. Was Clase somebody that you were like, well, at this point, I'm going to take him because of the value, or were you just saying, I'm waiting for a guy like that at that point?
Well, I was waiting on taking a pitcher. I didn't think I would be waiting that long. To be honest, I think I got sniped on a couple picks before that. So then I went and I took the second catcher, Contreras, and I took another outfielder, Springer. And then when it got around to about the 8th round, I didn't have any pitchers, and I was like, well, I better start getting cracking on that. And actually in my rankings that I did, briefly beforehand, Clase was the top pitcher overall on my board, ahead of any starters that were available at the time.
Yeah, I mean, a guy who can get 100 strikeouts certainly is solid there, and if he can get 30-plus saves, that adds up, and he's consistent every week. So I like the pick for sure. Now, starting pitchers, you did grab only 4 in the first, we got 22 rounds, so that was interesting.
Right.
Then you loaded up later. You got Gossman, you got Nestor Cortez, Lance Lynn, Charlie Morton. Those are your 4 top guys. Talk about that strategy of, okay, now I got to throw a whole bunch of them out there and hope that they come through each week.
That's pretty much how the strategy materialized during the draft. I got a late start on pitchers, but I felt like I built a very strong offense early. So I just went with the strategy of, throwing a lot of volume at the position of the pitchers, knowing that 9 of them are going to count each week. So until the later rounds, I didn't take too many risks on the pitchers. I tried to get guys who are like innings accumulators, guys that are going to be solid making their starts. And we'll see if that strategy works.
Yep.
All right, Scott, we're going to let you get going. Really appreciate you joining us tonight. Best of luck in this draft this year.
All right, thanks for having me.
You bet. Thank you. Let's move to Team 7, where Steve Ranahan was drafting tonight. Steve, how you doing this evening?
Hey, how you doing, guys? Great to talk to you.
Yeah, great having you on. So let's talk about your approach here with your first 3 picks. Yordan Alvarez at 7. Then you came back with Pete Alonso in the 2nd and Dalton Varsho. You're one of the, I believe, second catcher off the board. He was after JT Realmuto. Kind of walk us through your thought process with those first 3 picks, Alvarez, Alonso, and Varsho.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm big on Alvarez this year. Full disclosure, this was my first draft, so I was I wouldn't say I was lost, but it was like the first drafts I always kind of struggle with, especially later in the draft. But I definitely liked Alvarez, and I liked Alonso being there. I think couple of my picks that I liked were picked at, right before me. So, that wasn't my ideal pick there, but I kind of liked building that power early. Like in this contest, I think you gotta try to get as much power as you can, not kind of go crazy doing that, but try to get a little bit of that power. And I think over the years, I've sort of tried to focus on getting, more offense. I think I used to focus too much going heavy on pitching. And I think I'm learning as the years go, you really got to kind of focus a little more on the back end with pitching, kind of alluding to some of that points strategy that you talked about. But it's interesting. I look at the leaders every year, and all different strategies can win this. So it's, it's hard to sort of say this is the way that you have to do it, or this is the way that, you don't have to do it. So
yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, everybody has a different strategy in this contest, which is why it's so cool. You can go without saves, or you can load up a whole roster of closers if you want to. So it's really, really interesting. Speaking of interesting, everybody was loading up on power and hitters early on. There was only one starting pitcher, as Corbin Burns, picked in the first 33 picks. You took the second one. That was Sandy Alcantara with pick 34. I mean, you had a chance at Cole, Verlander, and others. Talk about your choice of Alcantara there.
Yeah, I think in this contest, I've kind of over the years, some of the, I've had like decent teams, and then you get a lot of injuries, and, not saying Alcantara can't get hurt, but I like the innings, and I like the stability, whether or not that's really, true that there's stability there. I just kind of like that, and I feel like he's, he may have peaked a little bit, but, I just like that, that solid starter that can go out there and give you innings and, be pretty consistent, doesn't really get bombed too often. So, and it was sort of like who I liked right at that spot. There were some of the hitters I didn't really like all that much, but, like I said, I'm still feeling the draft a little bit, but I didn't mind my first 10 rounds, and I kind of liked my infield, how I structured it, but I think I was a little light on the pitching, but, I guess that'll come in time.
All right, so your 8th round pick was a guy Greg and I were talking about in the last segment, the ADP segment, Byron Buxton, who to me is really the perfect best ball kind of pick because you know he's going to get hurt at some point, but you never know when he's going to get hurt. So best ball, he seems like an ideal best ball kind of candidate. Now, you said this was your first draft, but I do want to ask you, was he somebody you were kind of targeting at some point?
Yeah. I listened to your, Vlad Sedler, video on YouTube. Yeah, it was great episode, and just sort of, it's kind of trying to build some thoughts and things like that. And I never really take him, but with this type of format, it's like guys like that are going to probably win you something like that or get you awfully close. So, it's a risk, and it's probably not very high percentage, but I do like him, and I think in all sports now, I think I have a tendency to kind of shy away from injured players, but if they can give you like decent weeks and they can play 60% of the times and you can fill in somehow, I think it's, shying away completely probably isn't the best way to do it.
Now, this is the format you want to have him in. He can definitely help you for several weeks while he's on the field until he runs into a wall or something like that. So,
right.
Hey, you've won national championships before. You certainly won with us as well, a national championship. This is a contest where we don't pay a lot to the league prizes, right? You can double your money for first place in the league, but, boy, you can win $75,000 if the overall. I know you're prepping, and this is a great prep contest as well, but this is one where you kind of want to win it all, right? You're not trying to just win your league. You're trying to hit a home run with your players, and maybe you can get to those final weeks and win the $75,000 grand prize.
Yep. Yeah, and I think I've always played that way, and it probably hurt me early on, but I think it depends on your personality. I mean, I think I'm really conservative in real life, but I think sometimes I get in these drafts and I look at it, I'm like, oh my God, what the hell was I thinking? But yeah, I think it's definitely a good point.
All right, Steve, we're going to let you get going. Really appreciate you joining us tonight. Best of luck in this league this year.
Thanks, guys. Great to talk to you. Appreciate it. Great show.
All right. Thank you. All right, let's go to Team 10 where Chris Eller was drafting this evening. Chris, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so you have the last pick in round one, but you get two really good players in a 10-team draft. Of course, everybody's feeling pretty good about their start, but Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Kyle Tucker were your first two picks, so that's a pretty good way to build your roster to begin with, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, that worked out great. And, it's the scoring is, homers and steals, and it seems like I covered both right there, so a little more Tucker than Vlad with the steals, but, I think that was a perfect start for what I was trying to do.
Yeah, you're another one who went heavy on offense. Everyone kind of did. Carlos Rodon was your only starting pitcher. You got him in round 6 in your first 9 rounds. Talk about your strategy getting starting pitcher. I mean, you still got great guys. You Darvish in round 10 and Tyler Glass now in round 11. Solid, but you didn't have to waste early picks on those guys.
Yeah, no, yeah. I kind of just was trying to feel out the draft, see what everybody was doing, and I really noticed that everybody was letting pitchers fall a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I was able to kind of read what everybody else was doing and kind of get a good feeling of when, I would still have Yu Darvish with the K upside and Glass now with the K upside, because it's a points league and that's really what I'm chasing with my pitchers anyway. So I just tried to get a good feeling of how the draft was going to go, and I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, and you targeted saves much, much later in rounds like 14 and 16. So what was kind of your approach there with the saves category? Is, again, just kind of grabbing a couple much later and just having some? Was that kind of the thought process?
Yeah, so I might do it a little differently than a lot of people, but I pull up use projections. So I pull up the ATC projections and kind of plug in the scoring based on a projection model that I kind of like, and if you're looking at the model, it really shows that sometimes if you get some closers in that tier, it really works out to where you can kind of help out your starting pitching a little bit because the point totals are going to be pretty similar. I got Helsley and Presley are going to be hopefully 25-30 saves guys, so if I can get that, maybe that's a little better of a starting pitcher than other people were taking in that area.
Yeah, don't discount closers in this format because they can get you 20, 25 points consistently, and that's better than some starting pitchers can get you during the week. So last question I want to ask you is about catchers. We're talking about position scarcity. Obviously, in a 10-team league, there's a lot of good catchers out there, but they were still going high in this draft, in the third round, in the fourth round, and you waited. Travis d'Arnaud in round, 15, and then you got Logan O'Hoppe and Eric Haas. So you held off on catchers. Talk about that strategy. Are you concerned about that at all?
I'm a little concerned, but I think what I did in the other rounds is going to help me out. I mean, I have never really draft catcher, even in all my home leagues. I don't really draft catcher very, very high. And I had a few that I really liked, like Stevenson, for example, and kind of later catchers, but they were going so early that I just kind of got priced out of them. So I kind of took what I could get, and Travis d'Arnaud, I'm a Braves fan, so I watch Travis d'Arnaud a lot. So he's supposed to DH this year. He'll get some at bats, so I don't hate that pick right there.
All right, sounds good, Chris. We're going to let you get going. Thank you for joining us tonight, and best of luck in this league this year.
Awesome. Thanks. Appreciate it, guys.
You bet.
All right, great stuff from all our guests. Coming up next is going to be the weekly six-pack, so join us for that when we return with the High Stakes Fantasy Advantage.
Here's what's happening on Sirius XM.
We're on the road to WrestleMania, and you can download the best pro wrestling talk on the planet right now with Busted Open, a Sirius XM podcast. Here, Dave LaGreca, Mark Henry, Bully Ray, Tommy Dreamer, Mickey James, and the Busted Open crew anytime you want on the SXM app. That's included with all of our trials and popular plans. Or wherever you get your podcasts, just search Busted Open.
It's time to crack open another fantasy six-pack.
Real man of genius.
Greg Ambrosius and Tom Kesenick are tackling the 6 most pressing questions facing the fantasy baseball player in the Fantasy Six-Pack on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio.
I got my toes in the water.
Welcome back to the show. That's right. It is time for the weekly six-pack, and Josh, we're ready to go. Let's do this.
All right, guys, our poll question's already out there tonight, and it's asking everybody who their number 1 overall pick is in fantasy drafts. Who do you guys want to take first overall this year?
Well, for me, it's Trey Turner. I mean, he's a 5-category stud. He can hit 20-plus homers. He can have 100 RBI, 100 runs, 30-plus stolen bases. He can even hit 300. So he has to stay healthy to do that, obviously. But he has been relatively healthy these last 3 seasons. And the fact is, he's still only 29 years old. I like 2 things about Turner. One, he's likely back at the leadoff spot with the Phillies, and they got a solid lineup behind him. And 2, I think the bigger bases and the pickoff limitations are really going to help a guy like Turner. I could see him stealing 40-plus bases this year if he stays healthy.